Welcome back, dear viewers, to the final part of our first chapter of Manimekalai. In Chapter 1, Part 5, The Aftermath and Manimekalai's Path, we'll witness how the tragic events at Madurai ripple through the lives of all those connected to Kovalan. We'll see how a mother and daughter find their way through grief, how a kingdom honors a woman's extraordinary devotion, and how our young heroine Manimekalai begins her journey toward a destiny that will define her life. After leaving the burning city of Madurai behind, Kannaki, still consumed by grief but driven by an inexplicable force, began walking along the banks of the Vaikai river. Her feet carried her westward, toward the majestic western Ghats, those ancient mountains that had witnessed countless human dramas unfold beneath their towering peaks. For 14 days she walked, her spirit sustained by a purpose she herself didn't fully understand. Finally, she reached a place known as the Red Hill, a sacred peak that seemed to touch the very heavens. It was here that the gods had chosen to grant her the reunion she so desperately deserved. On that 14th day after his death, something miraculous occurred. Before the astonished eyes of the local hillmen, Kovalan appeared in a magnificent celestial chariot descending from the heavens. He was no longer the merchant of Kaveripatnam or the victim of Madurai's injustice, but a divine being clothed in celestial splendor. He had come to claim his faithful wife, to take her with him to the realm of the gods where their love could continue untouched by earthly sorrows. Kannaki, seeing her beloved husband transformed and glorified, felt all the bitter grief of the past days melt away. She mounted the celestial chariot beside him, and together they ascended to the heavens, their love triumphant over death itself. The hillmen who witnessed this miracle stood in awe, knowing they had seen something that would be spoken of for generations to come. These witnesses quickly brought news of the miracle to their king, Cheran Chenguttuvan. The tale of Kannaki's unwavering devotion, her terrible vengeance, and her final apotheosis touched something deep in the king's heart. His queen, equally moved by the story, made a remarkable request that they should build a temple to honor Kannaki, not as a grieving widow or an instrument of vengeance, but as the very goddess of chastity herself. The king embraced this idea with royal enthusiasm. He ordered the construction of a magnificent temple, where an image of Kannaki would stand as a symbol of perfect devotion and righteousness. This temple would become a sacred place where women would pray for the strength to uphold their own virtuous paths, and where justice would be remembered as a force that even kings must bow before. Meanwhile, back in Kaveripatnam, news of these events arrived like a thunderbolt from a clear sky. The city that had watched Kovalan and Kannaki depart in the dead of night now learned of their tragic fate. The streets that had once witnessed their love story now echoed with tales of their legend. For Madhavi, the news struck particularly deep. The man she had loved, the father of her child, had met such a cruel end. The woman who had been her rival in love had transcended earthly existence to become a goddess. These revelations shook her to her core. In her grief and reflection, she found herself drawn to the teachings of the Buddha, whose messages of compassion and the impermanence of worldly attachments suddenly seemed to illuminate the path before her. Making a decision that shocked many in her community, Madhavi put aside her dancing bells and colorful costumes, donning instead the simple robes of a Buddhist devotee. The woman who had once commanded audiences with her art now found peace in humble service at a Buddhist monastery, her days filled with meditation and acts of kindness. But perhaps the most profound transformation occurred in young Manimekalai. Already a maiden of extraordinary beauty and talent, she had been trained in all the arts that had made her mother famous. Her grandmother, Chitrapthi, had great plans for her future in the traditional profession of their family. Yet Manimekalai's heart had always beat to a different rhythm. Thoughtful and compassionate by nature, Manimekalai had long been fascinated by the deeper questions of existence. The tragic fate of her father, whom she had loved dearly, and the supernatural transformation of Kannaki, whom she had regarded as a second mother, only deepened her spiritual inclinations. The Buddha's teachings, with their emphasis on compassion for all beings and the search for liberation from suffering, spoke directly to her soul. When her mother chose the path of Buddhist devotion, Manimekalai felt her own destiny becoming clear. Despite her grandmother's disappointment, she knew she could never follow the traditional path that had been planned for her. With her mother's blessing, she too turned away from the life of an entertainer, choosing instead to walk the path of spiritual enlightenment. Together, mother and daughter found a new kind of peace in the monastery, their days filled with learning, meditation, and service to others. For Manimekalai, this was not an ending but a beginning, the first step on a journey that would lead her to discoveries and challenges she could not yet imagine. And thus concludes the first chapter of our epic tale. But Manimekalai's story is just beginning. Join us in our next series as we follow our heroine's spiritual journey, filled with supernatural encounters, tests of faith, and the discovery of her true destiny. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more captivating stories from ancient Tamil literature. Hit that notification bell to ensure you don't miss the start of our next chapter. Until then, may the wisdom of the ancients guide you on your own path of discovery.